Grace, lovely to have you here.
Thanks.
Thanks for, it's been a while after you actually...
No, it was like 2 weeks ago.
Was it? Was I not even here?
No, you weren't here.
Oh,
Was it 2 weeks ago?
it's sad.
Maybe it was longer, but I don't think it was long.
Oh, well, we've got plenty of time now to
Yeah.
unpackage that.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, what was sort of the main highlight of your 10 minutes?
Okay, I was talking about how I grew up in the faith and came to know the Lord really young, but that spiritual discipline was always missing from my life.
Right.
And that when I was, just before I turned 30, the Lord was really laying it on my heart that the Word and a daily pattern of reading the Word was just missing completely and absent from my life. And then I felt the Holy Spirit, or my good idea, prompt me to just behave like someone who loved the Word, because I heard someone say that when they were out of the Word more days than they were in the Word, they could feel it. And I was like, I can't feel that. Like, I don't know that feeling. I just know not being in it. And so I decided to just start behaving like someone who loved the Word, and then now I just love the Word, and the Lord's just done that.
So good.
I would say I always wanted the Lord to do that supernaturally. Like, Lord, I always prayed, like, Lord, give me a love of your Word. I want to love your Word. So I would always pray about that. But I think it was in the discipline that it came through and became a pattern in my life. And I just think that's actually quite powerful too, because we have a response as well in our life. We have a response to Him, right?
It's good.
Can relate to
Wow. So going back,
Yeah.
you were not born on the Gold Coast or
No, born
anything?
in Victoria.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
that. Plenty of judgment.
I can feel it across the table.
Let's wrap this up.
Yeah. Okay, bye guys. Back to Victoria. No, grew up in a
Thanks for joining the podcast today.
All right.
No, I actually love Victoria.
Yeah.
I was in Mornington for Christmas with my family down there.
Beautiful.
Oh, it's awesome.
I know, Mornington's great. We used to holiday down there a lot. But I grew up in a place called Daylesford, which is just, like, beautiful.
Wow.
Like, at the sort of close to the end of the Great Dividing Range. And it's just this beautiful, hilly, beautiful region. It's very, it's got a strong kind of New Age element to it because of its location. But it's just a beautiful region. And, yeah, so I grew up there. Mum and Dad moved there from Melbourne, so none of our extended family were around.
Just you and your sister?
Me and my sister and my brother in between us.
Okay, yep.
Brother and I grew up super close. We're, like, pretty close in age. Yeah.
That's cool. And you were brought up in the church?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how did that look? What did that look like?
Yeah, so my parents had really strong faith and we always went to church. And when I was 5, they became part of a church plant in our town. So we went to church outside of our town for, like, the first part of
Outside of, where was it? Dales?
Outside of Daylesford, yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I was 5, they joined a church plant. And then by the time I was 7, my parents were the senior leaders there, senior pastors there. Yeah.
And how did you find that? Because, you're a pastor's kid now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to meet that reputation of
I think
being naughty and...
Well, do you know what? I was so good until I was like 19. I was like so amazing. And like even my classmates knew how good I was. They'd keep me in line, like if I was ever naughty, because they're like, "Hey, aren't you a Christian?"
Yeah.
Like we'd play cheat, and they'd be like, "You're not allowed to lie." So I was very well behaved.
Right, okay.
Yeah, for a long period of my life.
Till you're 19.
Yeah. Yeah, but I was still pretty well behaved.
Yeah.
I feel like the story of my life is that the Lord has always been with me and I've always known Him with me. And there's been times where I haven't lived according to His purposes for me, but He's been faithful and stayed close and kept me from going too far, even though there's been periods in my life that maybe haven't looked ideal. It's never that, like, I forsake.
Yeah.
Is that
Forsook.
the word? Yeah, forsook the Lord. And definitely not that He did that for me, because He was always close, even in, like, big seasons of trials and difficulty. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with expectation?
I'm still dealing with it.
Oh, okay. Because being a pastor's kid, sometimes you behave just because of expectation.
Totally.
But there's also the sense of expectation that you get, just unspoken even.
Yeah, 100%. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I mentioned this in my Testify, I served from a really young age, I think 8. I really loved the Lord.
Yeah.
I met the Lord at 5. He came to me in a dream, Jesus. It was beautiful.
Wow.
And it was in a flower field. And he said to me, I want to be your best friend. Will you be my best friend?
Nice.
And I woke up, I was like, Mum, Jesus wants to be my best friend. So now I'm going to get baptized.
So good.
So I met the Lord young and I loved him and I wanted to serve him. But I think for a child that gets twisted quickly, right?
Yeah.
And so at 8 or even younger, started serving, cleaning. I was on the worship team even from 8, and I was worship leading by the time I was 13. And
Wow,
leading,
13.
Yeah, right?
Shucks.
Leading kids programs, and later in my early adult life, leading outreach youth programs and that sort of thing. So I was always doing stuff, and it was 100% my identity. It was what I did.
Right.
And if I was good enough, maybe not even for God, but for the people around me, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it can be a driving force.
It definitely was, and it was all through my 20s, and then at the end when I was. In 2021, when I moved up here, it was this big, the Lord had just brought me to this crossroads of being you actually can't live like this anymore. This is not faith. This is not a life of faith. And because it was my entire expression of me living a life of faith was what I did in the church and for the church. And so it was look, it was a yucky space that I came to, but the Lord was just come on, let's come out of this place. And I needed to move to get out of that because I was so committed to my church and family there.
It's interesting how people love that though. Hey, people love that sense of it's almost like overachieving.
Yeah, you're overachieving and you're hiding, I think, ultimately.
Yeah.
You don't have to be vulnerable before the Lord because you're doing so much. So everyone just thinks you're good. You're on it.
It's a weird thing because we talk about it like that, like there was something wrong with it, what you're doing, but isn't that what we're supposed to do? It's what was missing? What was missing in all of it? Because isn't that, I want my kids to grow up doing exactly what you just said.
Totally. And you know what? It was so rich, and I'm richer for it. Because I learned what it is to let my yes be yes. I learned what it is to be faithful in small things and big things. And they're attributes of the Lord. So they're things we're meant to learn and they're beautiful. Agreed. We're not meant to be stagnant in our faith and just receiving. There's got to be outworking. But I think for me, there was this element of everything was tied up in that. That was that became my full faith expression, what I did.
Would you say that you were receiving input in that time, or you were just serving and doing things?
Yeah, I was. Our church had great preaching, and absolutely I was getting built up in the Spirit for sure, and certainly receiving from the Lord. Through my 20s I served we had a house of prayer there, and I was the main musician, so sets were 2 hours and we would worship for that full 2 hours, and so there's no way that you can't get built up in the Lord in that space. There's just no way. So 100%.
Yeah, but that's different. That's different to intentional input, because that's spiritual time, 100%. But I mean, having people input into you, hey, this is a character trait you need to be developing. This is a part of your character that you need to look at. This is whatever.
So I did, at different times. And for sure, my parents and my dad, like Dad's always been like, I mentioned it in my Testify that he was always like, come on, like you're not reading the word, like let's get you into the word. And he really encouraged me and really encouraged me to get into that. And I've got a beautiful family friend in our life who was in that church, and she remains like one of my closest people. She would, nice. Call me up all the time when she saw stuff in me, because like Marshall said, there's like, yes, there's an expectation on you, but there's also an expectation that you have to get, and that can bring about some not brilliant behaviour. And so she would see some of that stuff in me, like pride or whatever it was, and she'd kind of call me out of it. That's cool. So there absolutely was that. That's cool. It wasn't constant, but it was always like it would come in and out. Yeah.
I think that, I think everyone who's been brought up in the church and that full on needs to go through the valley of who am I?
About 100%. Yeah.
Like my identity. If I couldn't sing anymore, have I lost who I am?
Yeah.
Well, no, you haven't.
Yeah.
But you have to get to that point, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Sort of the desert.
Yes.
It's dry and it's empty and,
Yeah. Because it can't all be about what we do, right? It's got to ultimately be about who God is and what He does and His kingdom. Yeah,
it might not even be a brought up in the church thing.
Yeah, well, that's true.
It's just a faith thing. It's like you come to church, you get saved, and you're new and people care about you, but then you're in.
Yeah.
And you're not on your own, but it's like you're responsible for your own journey with God.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
And there can be that pressure and expectation, maybe from just the general consensus of the community's level of,
yes,
faith.
Yeah, 100%.
And people want to get involved and so, they find meaning and purpose in it, and they think, wow, this is cool, I'm serving God. But then they also might get the other, affirmation and value. Oh, wow, this is awesome. This is who I am.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
So I get it. Wow.
You're doing something and then you stop doing something. And then you're like, oh.
It's not.
I'm not in.
I'm not important.
Who am I? How crazy, eh?
Totally.
Human condition, I think.
So you said at 19 you were good until 19.
Yeah.
What happened at 19?
Here we go.
Tell me about 19.
When I was just before I turned 18, so started year 12, and a few weeks into year 12, got really sick. I got glandular fever.
Oh.
But I was really sick. I was bedridden. I ended up having to drop out of school. I was in bed for 11 months. Yeah, the whole year from February to December.
What was that like? My brother got the same thing around the same time.
I had glandular fever when I was at school.
Yeah, I never had it.
Terrible. It was so awful because I was 18 and I was I'm this is the year, because I'm planning to go and be a doctor at this point. So I was got to knuckle down and everything's on this year. And probably because I was that stressed, that's why I got so sick. I remember my school photos, you should see them from that year. Because glandular fever obviously impacts your glands. My neck's like this.
Oh,
and my
actually.
eyes are puffing out of my head. I'm
do you have a yearbook photo?
Yeah, I do. It's hidden somewhere very well. It's bad. But yeah, I was so sick, and I went downhill really fast. And
11 months.
Yeah.
Wow, that's huge.
Yuck.
Mine was only 3 months.
It's such a long time. I was sensitive to light, so all the windows are blocked up. I was just this hermit in the house. My 4 siblings. I'm just ugh.
What do they say it's from? What were the doctors saying?
So glandular fever is, my understanding is that it's already in your system. If it's in your system, you could get it, and if it's not in your system, you won't get it, and that it's brought on by stress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So obviously probably that's
tough,
stress.
yeah.
And it usually happens, the most people that get it are sort of between 17 to 21.
Yeah, okay.
In that end of high school, beginning of uni. Yeah.
That's when people are starting to experience stress.
Yeah.
Not this day and age. It's 11, apparently.
Oh, Well, there you go.
Homework. If you're at a private school.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Wow.
that
So I
came
was
on
sick.
in your last year
That
of
came
school?
on, had to drop out. So by the end of the year, I was like, well, I'd never seen myself not finishing school. Like, I was really depressed and I was extremely anxious, but I was like, I have to go back to school. I was like, I have to. And I was so angry with God. Like, I was angry because I was like, I have served you all my life. How could you do this to me? Just like obviously a wrong understanding of God, but it was there. I was like, how could you do this to me? I was so mad.
Yeah.
I was like, how? Like, I didn't understand why I was feeling those things because my life had been like just this mountaintop. Like, parents were amazing, loved the Lord, everything was safe. We always had enough. Like, it was amazing.
This is awesome.
Yeah. And then, bam, I'm like super sick. I'm in bed. Mobile phones aren't really a thing.
No.
They sort of are, but not really. We didn't have any reception at our house, so I didn't stay
No
in contact with my
Netflix.
friends. No Netflix. It was VHSs and DVDs. And people were
Video
dropping
easy.
them around. Yeah. It was just really nice. It was really bad. And I remember I was at the end of that year and I was so close to walking away from God. I was like, I knew he was real, but I was like, if this is what he does to people, then...
You abandoned me.
Yeah, you abandoned me. I don't know if I want to follow you. My mum came to me, this is a side note, sorry, pre-19, and she read me that passage from, or just that verse from Proverbs. I think it's the end of Proverbs where it says, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but it's the glory of kings to search it out. And I was like... And she's like, you're actually allowed to ask God questions about this season.
Wow.
And so I started to do that. And that sort of held me together with him and like kept me close to him. He was close to me, but like it kept me close to him. But that time seeded something in me that was, I would say it was sort of like rebellion. And it was like mild. It was little, like in comparison, but it was really there.
Like a mustard seed.
Like a little mustard seed of rebellion. Like I just sometimes would be like, I don't want to go to church. And I was like, I think I was leading the worship team at that time. It was crazy to me that I was doing that in the season. Not when I was sick. Oh my gosh, no way.
After.
But once I got better. So I'm in year 12, I'm 18, 19, and it's just sitting there. It's just, I believed in the Lord. Knew I was asking him questions, but it was just sitting there. And by the end of year 12, I was like, do you know what? I have been good all my life. Like, I just want to enjoy life. And it just sort of took me on this path of still love the Lord, but I just wanted to live according to my ways and not his ways. And I knew what his ways were, and I'd done that. And I was like, I want to do this. And so I was just doing stuff like I wouldn't go to church. I'd hang out with friends. Like, they seem like small things. I would drink a bit, which, you know, the Bible says don't get drunk on wine. So that's not great. And I would swear and gossip and that sort of thing. And that was just this pattern from 19. And it would, obviously, when you start to do those things, your life starts to descend into them and they become patterns in your life. And they became patterns in my life through my 20s. And even though there was some point where the Holy Spirit said to me, the plans that I have for you are better than any you can come up with on your own. And I was like, oh, okay. I was probably like 22, 23. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like, I actually need to live your plans. But there'd been this pattern set up and it was really hard for me to get out of that pattern. I lived in a small country town. Our church was small, and then I moved away to uni, but still went to church back home. So I didn't know many other Christian people my age. All my friends were non-Christian. So majority of the voices I had speaking into me at that time were not faith-filled or sharing the knowledge of God. They definitely weren't. And so that was just, it was this pattern, this destructive pattern that was there. And the other stuff was there too. Like, it's weird.
It didn't disappear.
It didn't disappear.
Doesn't disappear.
It was there.
Yeah.
But there was absolute duplicity in my life. There was like this some days and then following God other days. And And,
Jostlated.
yeah, and I jostle between them. And I think about that time a lot recently, and I'm like, how is that, Lord? Because we're actually not meant to have duplicity. Like if we love the Lord, then we should be sold out for him. And I wasn't. I was like sold out for him in this aspect. But then there was this large aspect that wasn't. And it was like ungiven to him.
What did you study at uni?
I studied public health and international development.
Oh.
Yeah. And I loved
That sounds very official. Like, you said that just like
yeah, didn't I?
yeah. I can't even remember. And that was how long? 3 or 4 years? 4 years.
Yeah.
At Victoria.
No, yeah, in La Trobe University, Melbourne. So I moved down to Melbourne when I was 19.
Yeah.
And I lived there for like 6 years. So moved back to Daylesford when I was 25.
Oh, so 6 years, like a flatting type thing?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that just to finish uni?
Yeah, to do uni. I didn't plan to go back to Daylesford, but I think it was the Lord's mercy, like just pulling me out of that season of life. And because I'd been pulled out of it, like in my mind and my heart, but my behaviour hadn't really caught up with that yet. And so the Lord called me back really clearly to go back and be part of planning a house of prayer there. And
So you used to go from uni home every weekend?
yeah, or early on I did that, then I
yeah.
stopped and just fully moved to Melbourne. And,
Yeah, okay.
and I would sometimes go back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So then you stopped worship leading and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah.
During that time?
It was a big thing for me. So, it was probably a few years in, I fully stopped leading worship, and I was like, oh my gosh, who am I? Because it's been my whole life.
That's that question.
Yeah, that you were saying before. I was like, I remember I went overseas and I actually went to a worship conference, and the whole time I was there, I was just like, I do not know who I am. Like, what am I doing here? Like,
Wow.
because I led worship almost every week.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And I love to lead worship, and it's a big part of what the Lord has called me to in his kingdom is to lead his people in high praises. But it was my identity. That's not who I am.
That's good. So you need to back home. Did you have you worked in your profession? What you studied?
Yes, no, I have not.
Oh, okay.
So
Yes,
no. I would love to.
Okay, is that sort of
got
like
sidetracked.
a social work?
So what that is probably leads more to humanitarian aid and development.
Okay.
That's probably
Great.
more what it leads to, and that's what I'd love to do.
Wow.
But I got waylaid on beautiful things. So when I was at uni, I was a nanny, and then I started nannying for my cousin actually, who was a foster carer. And then one of the young people in her care wasn't able to live with her anymore. She was too high risk, and I just really connected with that girl, and I started doing support work with her. And then,
cool.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so then when I finished uni, and I'd been working as a youth worker in our town in Daylesford for a bit, but I was like, I feel like I really want to work. And I was like, I really want to work with foster kids.
Wow.
And so then I started working, in the child protection system. And it's very different in Victoria, but I worked in an agency, like a private agency.
Okay.
Or a government-funded agency, actually. Anyway.
It's probably private government funded.
Yeah. Non-government organisation that gets money from the government.
Funding by the government, yeah.
So I did that for 7 years.
Wow.
Something
Wow.
Like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, wow.
And loved it.
That's
Absolutely
cool.
loved it. Yeah.
And so what brought you up to the Goldie? Like, was it a bit random or?
Yeah. It was like total crisis. I was in a crisis.
Right.
I'd gone through, like I said, all of life was serving. So by the time I moved back to Daylesford,
After uni?
I was 25 or 20, I don't know how old I was actually. Roughly, let's say. And I moved back, and I just started supporting people in the church, which is what we meant to do. But my input from other people had probably lapsed at that point, and my whole life became about these few people that I was supporting. And I had horrendous boundaries and horrendous ability to be like, are you all right, Grace? Like for myself.
Yeah.
And like, what do you need in this moment? And so it was very like unbalanced, and it just got to a fever pitch.
Tipping point.
In addition to working in the system I was working in, which is
Already.
like ripe for burnout.
Yep.
I then worked with high-risk adolescents, which is like insane.
Stressful.
And stressful. And then I had all this in my personal life as well. A few friends with mental health stuff. It was a lot, and I was just really burnt out, and like I just couldn't see. What's that saying? Couldn't see the wood for the trees.
Yeah.
I like was just like, oh my gosh, like where am I? I was a mess. I was
Cooked.
a real mess. I was cooked. I was absolutely cooked. I was just done. I was no good to anyone by the end, and I had started to experience some pretty hefty anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Really bad. And just couldn't function. And actually it was a couple of my really good friends who aren't Christians, they came up to visit me and they're like, what is going on? Like, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong with you? Basically, they're like, this isn't good for you. Like, you need to get out of here. And so I actually moved in with one of my friends for a few months just to kind of, like, as a bit of a circuit breaker. I just needed a bit of space and a bit of circuit breaking. And and then when I was there, I was like, I know that I'm just on this like treadmill of what I think a life of faith is. But it's not really a life of faith. It's not a life being lived with you, Lord.
It's a life of slavery and works.
Yes, that I had enslaved myself to.
Oh, of course.
And because that's like from a young age, I probably got fulfillment from that, and probably people encouraging me. So then I started to like seek that out and be like, oh, people really like me when I do good things. And so I just did, and then it got bigger and bigger. And then I was like, I think I actually have to move. Like, and God had given me this date, and it was like, I think it was the 27th of July. It was 2021. So I was like 31 and 32, whatever. And this date was in my head, the 27th of July, but I was like, where do I go? Like, I don't know where I want to go. I like had all I was like, I could go to Perth, could go to the Sunshine Coast, could go, there was a spot in Victoria, and I was like, I have to go, but I didn't know where to go. And I was like, Lord, I don't want to go anywhere without you.
So, what was Perth? Where was
Nothing. None of them were anything. They were just places.
You just said
names.
I could go to Perth.
I just like, I could go to Perth. I was just like, I have to get out of what I'm in at the moment. So I was like, could go anywhere, but I don't want to go anywhere without you. And I was like beating myself up about it. And I was like, tell me where to go. Like, you have to tell me. Like, I don't want to go anywhere without you. God, like, it's so silly. And then I'd gone to visit my parents, who were living on Kangaroo Island. And I was sitting in the back of their car, and it was like quiet, nice music. And all of a sudden I just like heard the Lord say to me, like, where do you want to go? Because I'll go where you go. Nice. And I was like, really? You want to go where I go? And I was like, straight away I was like, I want to go and live by the beach where it's warm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was
Welcome
like,
to the Gold Coast.
right? And I was like, the Gold Coast. And I rang my sister, and the date that God had given me was actually the date of her housemate's wedding, who was obviously moving out. And so it was amazing. So
awesome. So you moved up here then? On the
moved up.
31st of July?
I did not, because of lockdowns.
Don't get started. Wow.
Yeah, right. So I had this great plan. I was going to drive up. I was going to like chuck my stuff in the car and like drive off. Escape, which is probably not the great, but it's true. And then lockdowns happened in Queensland. Like,
so
no way to you, Victoria. They were like,
wow. Yeah, that's right.
like, you can enter by flying, and that's the only way you can enter. And to enter, you have to quarantine.
Yeah.
And then they dropped the quarantine, and I was like, I have to go. I was like, I'm going on Wednesday. That's what I felt.
What date was that?
Oh, it was like, it would have been like the 30th or something.
Oh, okay,
so
cool.
The date I had was the 27th or 26th, something like that. And it was like only a few days later.
Okay.
And I was like, I have to go, but I'm going to have to fly. So I have to leave car here, and I'll have to buy a new car. And so I flew in. It was like it was literally like 1 or 2 degrees when I left in the morning in Victoria. It was raining and it was like
Just
dark
a normal
skies, normal day. And I was like, had this big puffer jacket on. I had all my suitcases and like everything. And I got to the Gold Coast and it was like 21 degrees. And I was like ripping the jacket off. I was like sweating. I was like, what is this?
Yes.
Welcome home.
But then the police were waiting and they were like, sorry, there's been new cases in Victoria, so you're going straight into hotel quarantine. So I did 2 weeks of hotel
Oh
quarantine.
my God.
Right.
Wow.
I know. Yeah. But it was a good time. And do you know what was so cool is the day I moved up here, like every presence of anxiety was gone.
Wow.
Like it went, I think I had like
So
a
good.
couple more times in that year where I felt a bit anxious, but like
Yeah,
nothing.
praise the Lord.
It was amazing. It was
What-
so cool.
What was hotel quarantine like? Were you in Surface?
No, I was in Broadie and
Oh, yeah.
I was in the Sofitel.
Oh,
So it was pretty
oh,
nice.
wow. Sofitel's
right?
lovely.
Right?
Could you see the beach?
I could not, but I could see the mountains and that was really pretty.
What floor?
And what for?
What level?
What
no, what floor?
I was like, what for? Like,
I want to look
Did you hear the
outside.
story?
yeah. And it was like, oh, gee, maybe
High?
like it was pretty high. It was
Oh,
like
good.
mid up, maybe like the 14th floor or something.
Nice.
No windows open, eh?
Actually, I had a balcony.
No.
Praise the
Bam,
Lord.
Right, full sliding door.
Oh.
I just laid out
sick.
on my
That's
balcony. I was
cool.
like wide as a ghost, which I still am, but I was wider, and I just like laid out there.
Oh, that's cool.
Got sunburn.
That's cool.
And I suppose you packed your winters,
Yeah.
so you had, I have to have a whole new wardrobe.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
So cool.
Exactly. It's so much colder there, guys. Like really so
Yeah,
much
I've been
colder.
Oh, yeah. Like they're already wearing hoodies and stuff now.
Oh, yeah.
It's chilling.
I posted a photo on Instagram the other day of me at the beach. It was like blue skies and sunny. It was like 29 degrees or something. And my friend, my entire feed was just like, oh, good for you, it's pouring rain here. Good for you, it's freezing. Good
Yeah.
for you, it's freezing.
No, shucks.
Wow. So, okay, you're in quarantine, you're out of quarantine.
What year was that? 21?
21.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then what? Like faith community, how did you
Yeah.
find that?
Yeah. So, like I was burnt out from church, remember?
Yeah.
Like I was like crispy.
Cooked.
I would say, yeah, I was cooked.
Well,
Double cooked bacon.
Literally.
oh,
And yeah.
brittle. Yeah.
Well, I'm a vegetarian.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, podcast
Double
over.
cooked
yeah, yeah.
duck.
Victoria and vegetarian. Get out.
Boo. So I got out on like a Thursday and I was like, I won't go to church for a few weeks because I'm just like done. And then I really felt the Holy Spirit be like, I need you to go to church because if you don't go to church, I can see that you won't go back. And I was like, oh, okay. Best go. And my dad...
Best go.
Best go. And for me, I don't... I love a small church. When I was in Melbourne, I was part of a big church. And I love where there's no lights and it's just, yeah, it's a bit more raw and natural. And my dad was like, oh, we've been to chapel. Like, you'd probably like it. You should go. It was back in the senior sits days.
Oh, yo.
Yeah. And so I went along and I was like, oh, yeah, this is good. Because it was pretty small.
Yeah.
I mean, like it was big-ish, but
No, it was good.
No, it's nice and small.
yeah, it was a few hundred people. It was 2 services, I guess, so
Yeah.
you never saw everyone. And yeah.
It was a cool, musky old hall.
Yeah, yeah. But it was so nice how it like opened onto the canal
that's the best.
thing. It was beautiful.
People hang around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone would hang around.
That
It
was
was nice. But I'd just sneak in the back. Like I'd come at like just as it started, to be honest, and I'd just sneak in there, just like sit there, and then I'd like maybe look at someone, maybe be like, "Hi, how are you? Yeah, good, thanks. Yep, great. Have a great week," and then run off.
Did you wear your hat? Don't talk to me.
Yeah, I felt like it. But I'd maybe not a hat, but I'd like have my hair like hanging down. Just hiding. I just was, just was done. It was good.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was really good that 12 months
Yeah.
from when I arrived until when I went overseas last year. The Lord was just healing, just doing a healing work inside of me.
That's good.
Just in my spirit and just...
So good.
Yeah, and actually still doing it, but there's been a level of wholeness from that season that has been brought about. And so it was really good for me to come into a place where there was no expectation on me to serve. No one knew me. And I just...
Be refreshed.
It was just an opportunity to be refreshed. Yeah. And it was hard. It was hard. I'm an extrovert. I love to know people. I love to talk. So it was like hard. But there's a situation I put myself in where I'd walk in and just like... not talk to anyone.
Because you got a sister up here, right?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Then you're close with her and...
Yeah, we're best friends.
Yeah, I went to a conference and I'm like, and I knew you were away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Sam, to my wife,
Yeah.
that's Grace. I swear that's Grace at Presence.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, man, that has to be Grace. And then we got introduced after and she's like, oh, my sister goes to your church. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was the craziest thing, hey? She's lovely.
Yeah, we look very similar. We're in a season where we don't look so similar, but we go through these times where everyone will be like, you guys twins.
Yeah, and it was
we're like 4.5 years apart.
It was a dark room.
Yeah.
And like I'm seeing her.
You should have
from,
gone
like,
to
the side.
Specsavers as well.
Yeah, probably.
I'm legally blind.
She's the best. And
Seems very sweet.
she is super sweet. And yeah, she's my best friend. I love her.
That's cool. As.
Yeah.
And so she's locked in here, eh?
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, she's a teacher at King's.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she's great.
It's awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well,
That's the
what would you encourage people with from your, just this thread through your life?
Before you encourage, I want to ask a question because
Okay.
we'll probably wind up on that. But how much has your view of God changed from when you first knew that God was real until now?
Yeah. Do you know, I think I said this when I did Testify, is that reading the Word has given me this understanding of just how big God is and how big His kingdom is and how far it stretches back and how far it stretches into the future. So I think that understanding that He's not just my personal God, but that He's this big, mighty God that stretches for all of time before, and He'll stretch for all of time ahead, and He remains faithful. And I think on that, my closing thoughts. I love this verse from Timothy. I think it's 1st or 2nd to 11. You can tell the people, Marsh. It says, therefore the saying is true. If we die with Him, we'll also live with Him. If we endure with Him, we'll also reign with Him. If we deny Him, He will also deny us. If we are faithless, He remains faithful.
So good.
And that He's so faithful. And that is that's the thing that stretched through my whole journey. Like, there's so much in my life that's happened where He's come through and been present. But the big thing is His faithfulness to me and to the generations before me. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, Proverbs 27 verse 13. No, just kidding. No,
Do it.
No, it's 2 Timothy. It is 2 Timothy.
2 Timothy 2:11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Good. Well, we've grown to love and appreciate you, Grace.
Thanks.
What you carry, you certainly carry grace in your life.
Nice.
You're graced. What is grace? Is a gift from God, isn't it?
Grace is grace of God, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
And my name's actually Hannah Grace.
Oh,
and Hannah
wow.
means grace of God as well. So
Wow,
just
grace.
little tidbit.
Grace upon
Grace,
grace.
Grace upon grace.
Which is God.
God upon God.
upon God. I love your journey with reading the Word and like what you said, you always prayed for God to give you the passion for reading the Word. And
Yeah.
you're like, but there's a practical application of that just starts. And I'll relate to that hard, eh?
Yeah.
Same. I love that.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So thanks for sharing that. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for being
having
an
me.
awesome part of our community, and you know, I expect you to be there every Sunday out
Yes. Worship leading.
up front worship leading.
And we know when you're not there. It's all in the book.
It's all keep it a little tally. But hey, you know, we've got a Grace community. We've got a Grace. You're allowed 5. Grace is in it. 5 is the number of Grace. You have 5 misses in
Oh my
there.
goodness,
You're
I
out.
missed a few already.
Yeah. Yeah, you've
So
got
we
2
don't
left.
We don't have 3 strikes you're out
Yeah.
because we're gracious.
Grace upon grace.
Yeah.
We have 5.
It's 5.
We brought you here to warn you.
Yeah. In front of all these people.
Wow.
Shucks.
Wow. That's a funny little rabbit warren, wasn't it?
Good place to end.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you're amazing.
Yeah, you're awesome. Thanks, Grace.
Thanks heaps.
You guys are too.
So good.
Thanks.